Would you mind telling me whose brain I did put in?
And you won't be angry?
I will not be angry.
Abby someone.
Abby someone. Abby who?
Abby Normal.
This is the Abbey Normal podcast, here to tell you that you're weird, and that's normal. I love to read. It's my number one hobby. Though when people say things like, I love to hike or bike or run, saying you read doesn't feel like a valid activity. It sounds like you're lazy and lonely, which is not true, by the way. I love so many genres of literature. Is that the right term? I need interesting characters with good internal and external dialogue. But that can exist in fiction, historical, biographies, sci-fi. In elementary school, my favorite books were Wrinkle in Time by Madeline L'Engle and Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of Nim by Robert C. O'Brien. I read them again recently, and they're both still good. In middle school, I got into Stephen King, which was so deliciously disturbing. Gage from Pet Sematary can still give me the goosebumps. I just finished The Testaments by Margaret Atwood, which is, of course, fantastic. It's a follow-up to The Handmaid's Tale. And I started Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. So my love for books runs deep. There's one genre that I have never really explored: romance. I suppose my biases, see lonely ladies, cats, have prevented me from exploring this robust, sensual, deep category. But I think that's about to change. My friend Darlene has a secret identity. As the author Kay Harris, she writes contemporary romance novels. Darlene grew up in a suburb outside of Detroit, Michigan. She has a, quote, worthless master's degree in anthropology. And among other equally interesting jobs, she was a park ranger in Yellowstone National Park. Annie and I really want to know more about this feminist word porn and how she started writing it.
I want it deep inside. You got it deep inside.
I write contemporary romance novels.
Mm-hmm.
On the steamy side, apparently.
Really? How do you know if you're steamier or less steamier?
It's bodice ripper shit.
Totally. I guess, and not erotica, you have to be clear, because...
Okay.
So, now that I'm in the world, I've learned all these, like, categories of romances. Subgenres, yeah. So, there's 1 to 5. Okay, so 1 is sweet, meaning that there's no sex, like they might kiss.
Yeah.
And they're usually religious. Not always, but they generally are, the Amish books and stuff, right? Which my mom loves, by the way. Number 2 is there's sex in it, but it's closed door. So they kind of talk about that they had sex, but they don't have any descriptions. And then number 3 would be what I write, which is considered steamy romance, which is basically where there's descriptions, but you don't use certain words. Like you don't usually use the word like cock.
Okay.
You don't usually use
PG-13 words.
Yeah, it's like PG-13. Yeah, exactly. So we're talking about penetration, we're talking about cunnilingus, but we're not using, like, we're gently using those words.
Okay.
And then number 4 would be erotic romance, which is we're definitely having lots and lots of very graphic sex. So the PIV, we're penis and vagina. We're having lots of very graphic sex, and we're using all the words. And this can be, by the way, I say penis and vagina. There's also, MM and FF and MF and MMF.
All the combinations of
all
humans.
The combinations.
And
so
all
let's
of the
be
parts.
Totally clear, yes. And all the parts. But the romance is still a part of the story. Like, there's still a romance there. But if you took out the sex, it would change the story. Okay. So that's how much sex there is. Like, a lot more. In what I write, there's usually generally 3 scenes per book. Like, that's the general rule.
3 sex scenes.
3 sex scenes per book. In erotic romance, there's it's all throughout the book.
Wait, what's number 5?
5 is erotica, and erotica has no other story except the sex. So if you,
It's just word porn.
it's just there's just sex. So there's really not any other story to
Yeah.
it. It's just sex. So I write 3, which is the steamy contemporary, and I kind of found that out because I won a contest and it was the steamy, and I was like, oh, okay,
That's your
kinda-
box you're in.
I guess that's what I am.
Are there steamy romance podcasts?
Supposedly there are. Now I haven't listened to any, I'm ashamed to say, but I happen to know there's at least one because I follow the people who do it on Twitter and they're part of Romance Writers of America. So
That reminds me of that episode of The Office where Phyllis is listening to 50 Shades of Grey.
oh my god, yes.
And
So
like
good.
getting all gross.
We should do a whole podcast on The Office, by the way, because it's like my favorite thing
So good.
ever is The Office. And I have a lifelong love for Jim. Jim Halpert is all the things. I'm sorry.
For sure.
He is the dream man. I'm sorry. He just is.
I don't know, I'm kind of into Dwight.
Oh my god.
Oh, no. Did you watch The Quiet Place with Jim?
No, so I haven't watched that yet.
Oh,
but it's on my
good.
list. There's a movie with him and Maya Rudolph that is one of my
Away we go.
favorite things.
I love that movie.
Is that movie not magic?
Yeah.
And he's so
How have I not
cute.
watched this with
I don't
Maya
know.
Rudolph? I love
I-
her.
You're gonna
Right?
love her so much in this.
It's
Okay,
so
I'm gonna find it.
We're gonna watch it tonight.
good.
I mean, Aaron
So good.
Taunton loves a good rom-com, so
He does. I love watching rom-coms with Aaron Taunton.
that's my husband.
Yeah. I feel like this goes on the list right
Oh
now.
wait, away we go. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Cool. Anyway.
so how did you get into that?
Okay, so when we were living in Yellowstone year round,
Ah, right.
I-
Time on your hands.
oh my god, time on my hands. And like it was dark at 4:30 and it was freezing cold outside and I sat by a fire and my husband worked 10-hour days and I worked, but I worked a regular shift and then went home and had all this time on my hands. And I just, I'd always liked stories and telling stories, and I love reading, and I love reading romance novels. So I just kind of started writing them, and it just kind of went from there.
So you were just like really horny in the woods, waiting for your husband to get home.
There you
It's
go.
like the perfect setup.
There you
And
go.
you can't go outside because there are bears out there.
There's
Right.
bears. There's a fireplace. I mean, all of it.
The fire's
All the things.
crackling.
Oh yeah, real fire.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You
all
got
the
your
things.
silk nightgown on.
Oh my god, I have no silk. Sure, I don't have a silk nightgown. Just to
Also,
be totally
sleeping
clear.
in nightgowns is super uncomfortable.
I
I've
hate
never-
nightgowns.
I don't-
because they
wear
always
nightgowns.
end up around your neck.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's
you're just
no-
naked. There's
You're
no
just
purpose
There's
to
no
a nightgown.
It's stupid. I actually sleep in tank tops. That's what I sleep in.
Yeah, every night, tank
Yeah.
tops.
One tank top, and my underwear.
That's it.
Totally clear. Yeah.
Yeah, Annie and I are fully clothed at night.
Yeah, we are. I'm probably gonna go to sleep in this. Probably on Abby's couch.
I want to wear cute nightgowns though. Like I think that they look cute, but then you get into bed and roll around and it's pointless.
They immediately
completely-
ride up, and
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
and then
a
it's
nightgown.
uncomfortable because then it bunches like right under your ribs when you're laying on your side, and then it's just
Ugh, it's terrible.
stabbing you.
It's
It's a
terrible.
nightmare.
Do you wear underwear to bed?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Do
Yeah.
you not?
I'm an anti sleeping in underwear person.
Well, you
Yeah.
also are sleeping in bed next to your husband's.
That's true.
I sleep with
Neat,
underwear, just
easy.
to be clear.
Right.
No pants. Like you,
But no
it's a
pants.
one layer separation.
Right, right.
That's correct.
It's
yes.
one
There's no pants.
one item. Yeah.
That's right.
My mother always told me it was better to sleep without underwear so that your business can breathe at night.
I've heard that before too.
Yeah. Prevent yeast infections
Yeah,
and
I've heard
whatnot.
I guess I don't always do it. It just like
Whatever happens, happens.
if the underwear is already on, I'm not gonna take off my comfy pants to take off my underwear,
Right.
then to pull my pants back up to go to sleep.
For sure. That's too much effort.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, typically how it
Yeah. Makes sense.
ends up.
Do you want to read us the thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is an example of level 3. So the book is called Julia's Wish. I call the Wish series, and all 4 of the women in the book have our birthday, Annie.
Oh.
So and they're birthday buddies.
I love it. It's basically about you guys.
Yeah, kind of.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
I didn't know this.
She did not know this.
Oh my gosh. So when I moved to Oakland, my first and best friend was my neighbor. She had a baby like the same age as my daughter, and so we would hang out.
I thought I was your best friend.
Uh-oh.
In Oakland, I'm saying. She lived in my apartment building. She was my new friend. It turned out she and I had the same birthday.
Wow.
And our daughters, who are currently best friends, their birthdays are one day apart.
Oh my God.
So I'm like really into this whole birthday zone we're in tonight.
It's like
Yeah.
the universe is bringing
Yeah.
the birthday buddies together.
It's like
Agreed.
a thing. Yeah.
Agreed. And now they're going to have sex, so go
Yeah,
on.
so that was the premise of the concept of the series, was that all 4 of these women have the same birthday.
Wait, do they
and
know each other?
They all work at a candle company in Richmond. One of them's an HR assistant, so she discovers this birthday thing. And so what they do is they meet every year on their birthday, and they have, a drink, and this one year they make a wish. And what they decide to do is to hold each other to the wish and make it happen by the end of the year. So each book takes place over the course of this year.
Bow chicka wow wow.
Bow, chicka, wow, wow. And then the 4th book, which is Julia's Wish. Julia is going blind, is 38, and she wants to have a baby, but she's had a rough time in relationships, partly because she's just a real type A personality. And so all the guys she's dated, she's kind of pushed away from her. Mm-hmm. And then when she started to lose her sight, she realized that there was kind of a ticking clock. In addition to being 38, she wanted to be able to see the baby before. Yeah, and I researched a real sight disorder where you lose your sight kind of gradually. Mm-hmm. Forgive me, I don't remember what it's called right now, but so she goes to a sperm bank. And the sperm bank that she goes to is different from like your average sperm bank, which I also did some research on sperm banks. Mm-hmm. I swear to God, my Google account, it's like the weirdest thing ever. You normally, a sperm donor is totally anonymous and you pick based on characteristics. Well, this sperm bank, which is totally fictional, you actually get to meet the sperm donor. And
okay.
So they connect you sort of like they would a date, right? So they actually match you with a sperm donor. So that's the premise. So she goes to this.
Do they fall in love?
Well, so here's the thing. She went to the sperm bank, and the lady who runs it was out. She was actually in rehab, and so the lawyer did her intake meeting, and he is like this hot young thing named Emilio, and he's like 10 years younger than her. And he is raising his 3 nieces because his sister died tragically. Ooh. And so he has taken in his 3 nieces. And so, so he's like all that. I've had people who read it write me and be like, Emilio. I'm like, I know, right?
A man and preferably a man and a baby is like the hottest thing ever.
Right.
But like a man and like 3 babies.
This is seriously pretty cute. All he wants is for them to be happy, and they've had this like super traumatized childhood. He's adorable. Like he goes to great lengths to make his nieces happy, and he's super adorable. They end up being, it's a friends to lovers thing. So they end up like befriending, partly because she's like so charmed by these 3 girls. Yeah. And so it's like the 2 of them sort of raising these girls as friends. Uh-huh. He's got the hots for her, but she's always like, no. Like,
I'm doing this thing.
I'm going to have a baby at a sperm bank. I don't have time for you. And he's like, well, you don't have to do that. Like, why don't we explore our thing and you can go back to the sperm bank later? And she's like, no, I don't have time. They've been through all of this, right? And she's already told him that she doesn't want a relationship with him, and he's accepted it. And now they're sitting on the couch in the living room.
I'm so excited.
Abby just fist pumped.
And the kids are asleep. Okay. So Emilio wasn't completely sure, but he thought the warmth spreading in his chest was hope. Who do you think she was? Julia's cheeks turned an adorable shade of deep red. She crossed her arms over. Oh, I also want to tell you that
you're such a tease right now.
He's Hispanic. She's black. I want to be clear because I don't do the like white on white stuff anymore. It's too boring. Okay. Julia's cheeks turned an adorable shade of deep red. She crossed her arms over her chest. How should I know? And why do you look so damn happy? Were you jealous? He asked. A sound came out of her, half indignation and half disbelief. It made Emilio laugh out loud. Julia dropped her arms and one hand gently, hesitantly covered his. If I admit that I was, will you tell me who she is? He leaned toward her. Thank you, and yes, I absolutely will. She's my sister's best friend. Her name is Kimmy. She's married, and there's nothing between us other than a deep love for Eliza and a shared sense of loss. We get together a couple times a month. Julia dropped her face closer still. Her lips nearly brushed his. Is that what you wanted?
Yes.
Okay. Emilio slowly lifted his hand and placed it at the back of her head, his thumb stroking a few of her soft braids. I think it's pretty great that you were jealous. You do, huh? Emilio closed the small distance between them and covered her lips with his own. His kiss was gentle and measured. Julia's was not. She attacked him with a fervor he hadn't known she possessed. Her mouth opened, her arms wrapped around his neck, and her leg hooked over his as she pushed him back onto the couch. When, after a deliciously long time, his lips moved down her jaw to her neck, and his hands ran up under her blouse along her sides, she let out a soft moan. In an instant, they both sat up and looked over the back of the couch toward the hallway leading to the girls' bedrooms. Then, almost comically, they turned back to one another. Bedroom, Emilio said. Julia nodded, and they both scrambled up off the sofa and hustled toward the master bedroom off the far end of the house. As soon as the door was closed behind them, he sealed their mouths together again and moved them both toward the low bed in the far corner. Julia smiled around his kiss and tugged at his dress shirt, ripping it out of the waistband of his gray work slacks. Julia wore her work clothes as well, and the silky blouse slipped through Emilio's fingers as he pushed it up. Julia lifted her arms and let him pull the top over her head. He tossed it lightly toward his dresser, but had no idea if it made it, because his gaze was focused on the lacy bra that held her perfect breasts high in her chest. Below it was a beautiful taut belly covered in smooth, dark skin. Emilio fell to his knees and kissed and licked from her navel to her sternum. Julia let out a soft, sexy chuckle and reached behind her. Emilio heard the click of the metal clasp, and then the lacy little thing fell to the floor. He moved to cover the newly exposed skin with his hands, lips, and tongue. Julia allowed him to linger there for a while until her impatience caused her to yank on his hair. "Come here." Emilio obeyed, standing in front of her as she frantically unbuttoned his shirt, then slid the arms down, catching them on his wrists. Just as he managed to pull the shirt off his arms and fling it somewhere behind him, her hands dipped inside his pants. Emilio gasped. Julia grinned like the Cheshire Cat and popped the button, slid down the zipper, and dropped his pants to his ankles. Emilio stepped out of them and toward her. He placed one hand on her right hip and used the other to slide the zipper of her plum-colored skirt down the other side. Then he pulled the skirt down, letting it slide to her ankles. Julia towed off her shoes and stepped out of the skirt while Emilio bent down and discarded his socks. Both in nothing but their underwear, they came back together and fell onto the bed. Emilio rolled them so Julia's smaller body lay sprawled over his. He hooked his fingers in either side of her delicate panties and dragged the lacy material down her legs. She shimmied them the rest of the way. He reached one hand between their bodies and found that place he knew would throw Julia into a higher level of pleasure. Almost instantly, his prediction came true. As he stroked and rubbed, she tipped her head back.
Your hand
He made her
across my
flesh,
face.
thighs and stomach trembling against his skin. She did. Then she nearly hit
Those
upon
curls,
his
baby,
and walked up the receipt.
they fall right into place.
She didn't wait long to put herself above him, waist straddling waist. Do you want me to stop?
I mean, I don't think Abby does, but how long do we want this to go on? Also, this is kind of awkward reading this out.
I'm the one who's reading it.
I know, but we're just listening to this
It's like watching porn together, which I feel like women do not do very
Women do not do
frequently.
that.
That's like not a thing that we do.
No, it's not.
But
And you know,
please tell me what comes next.
So
I think you need to buy the book and find out.
I want to be clear about a couple of things. First of all, there's always protection in my books. And so there is an explanation as you read further that they've both been tested for STDs.
Good.
And I frequently use condoms in my books. This one, there's not. And there's a reason for that. It's part of the plot. But
Yeah, because she
Trying
wants
to
to
get
have a
pregnant.
baby.
Right.
What?
Yeah.
Make
And
a baby.
I also am big on taking off clothes because I feel like in a lot of romance novels, they are like instantly naked. They're like, they rip each other's clothes off. And I'm like, no.
Women have a lot of clothes.
Slow down. Yeah, like they're instantly naked. They're just like rip and then it's all gone. I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that. Like taking off the clothes is either awkward or it's sexy.
Yeah.
And there's no in between. And so you have to figure out for those characters which it's going to be. and then make it happen. So I just I hate the clothes fell off. My clothes have never fallen off in my life.
And it's always awkward, one arm is stuck in your shirt.
Yeah,
you know?
something weird usually happens.
What I really liked that he took off his socks.
Yeah.
Right? Because if I don't get his socks off, then he's having sex with socks on, and that is just not.
It's so embarrassing.
Well, it makes
So
it
embarrassing.
not intentional.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
Whoops, I fell into her with my
Right.
dick.
Yeah. Sorry. You get an idea of how we're having sex, but there's no you know what's happening, but we're not saying the cock went into the,
Yeah. I definitely knew what was happening.
right.
I felt awkward about it. I was like, I shouldn't be here.
And now she's disappointed that I made it stop.
It's meant to be read alone by yourself.
Perhaps in a bathtub.
Maybe a bathtub is always a good place, though be careful with your Kindle. But yes, absolutely. I have books that might be water damaged. It's possible. But yeah, I mean, so that gives you an idea of what a steamy contemporary romance is.
I feel like I need to start reading them because I have not experienced that.
I think she wants to now.
She
I
does.
do. I was like, I'm enjoying that.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. And
She's like, go on.
I do like that. I felt the connection that you described earlier. I'm like, she's 38, she's going blind, she wants to have a baby, she meets this guy and his sister passed away. I'm feeling all of that story already. So when they fall into bed together, I'm like, this is meant to be, it's amazing. I feel satisfied by that whole thing, the whole process of getting there and loving each other. But I know not all romance is necessarily that involved.
If it's gonna be a romance novel, then the sex advances the story. So there, like I said, there were 3 times. Usually there's a first, they realize they're in love, and then there's sort of a celebratory, we are in love having sex. And I think that's definitely, when I write sex scenes, that's definitely the case. They have a purpose to them. And I also feel like it's kind of empowering to read and to write them, and even to read them out loud, because when we as women, 'cause I truly believe that romance is feminist, for the most part. I can't say that for every book. There are certain books I've read and been like, and thrown away. But the genre is feminist because it's empowering to women, because it says it's okay for us to want to tell our stories, to want to connect, in the way that you're talking about connecting to this character, and for us to feel good about sex. For us to go, yeah, you know what? We like it when men do. We like it when they do this. It's like we were talking earlier about Outlander, okay? Let me tell you when I fell in love with Jamie Fraser. I fell in love with Jamie Fraser when he was going down on her, right? And I was like, that's right. Because that was an empowering moment. I was like, yeah, this is how it should be. It shouldn't be women are always just pleasing the man. They're nothing but the vessel. We like sex. There's nothing wrong with that. And the more that we talk about that and talk about what we like in sex, the more empowered we as women are. Sex should not be just for men. And you talked about, women don't watch porn together. I don't watch porn at all. It doesn't do anything for me. But you know what I do like is my porn in words.
Right.
She likes a dirty book.
I like a dirty book, and I like dirtier books than I read.
Right.
Or than I write. I can't write the books. Some of the books I read, I'm like, I can't do that.
And I feel, and again, I've watched very little porn in my life, so I can't admit my ignorance. But they don't have the stories like you're talking about.
It's a story,
as far as I know. Yeah. So I'm not into just the bang part of it. I want to know the build up,
and I feel like
the emotional build up. And I also have watched very, very little porn in my life, but that when I have, it's memorable because I remember going,
that doesn't make sense.
Right.
Yeah, right.
And also,
the plumber doesn't just show up and I want to bang him.
I don't want to bang the
know,
plumber.
has he brought his baby? Does he like his mother? Then maybe.
Do you have an STD?
Right. And they're never, they're not hot.
No.
They're not sensitive. They walk in and start banging. These are not things that women want.
No, they're not. No.
And I want me and 3 other women to please this guy on our knees. No. No. I want Jamie Fraser to wake me up the way he woke Claire up in that episode. Thank you very much.
Okay,
red
but
curls. Anyway,
we talked. Yes, we're into Jamie Fraser, but we talked earlier about the rapiness of Outlander.
Yeah.
So how do you continue watching it despite that?
Yeah, it's difficult. And you know what? Interestingly, to go back to romance novels, sorry, and kind of ignore your question, but that is an issue that I have. Like, that's usually a do not finish for me, is when things get rapey. A lot of times, it's disguised in a romance novel as sex when it's not.
Right, like just aggressive sex.
Yeah, but it's not.
Yeah.
And so there's always consent in my books. And sometimes it's even explicit consent. Like the one I just read was like they didn't actually say it aloud, but a lot of times they do. A lot of times the guy in my book will actually ask.
Hot.
Yes. Yeah. Consent is sexy, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, in this case, she was being like physically aggressive, so I didn't feel like the need to do that. But in a lot of cases, especially if I have a traumatized woman, the guy asks.
Yeah.
Do you want to do this? Are you okay? Are you sure? Sexy as hell, right?
Yes.
Of course I do. Now I do. And I like, when I read romance novels, I like explicit consent as well. And
Because we need to normalize it.
Yes.
Well, and because, I mean, what a woman wants is to be wanted. Like, that is the sexiest thing ever when you know, like, the guy is dying to be with you.
Yeah.
Body, mind, soul, whatever.
And still asks.
So that's the
before
thing.
just
But
taking it.
that's what asking does. Can I kiss you? Can I touch you here? Can I do this? It's indicating verbally how much they want you, right? When they're just doing it without asking, you don't know for sure. You're wondering like what's happening and why and da da. When they verbalize it, it's a confirmation, and that's what makes it hot, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's totally sexy. Yeah. I think my first several books, there was always an explicit discussion about it. Yeah, I read one. I read one because I had to. So I judge contests as part of just trying to be a good part of the community, the romance writer community, and I'm a member of the Romance Writers of America and everything. So sometimes I have to read books that I might not have otherwise read, and historicals are not my bag, and that's where this happens a lot.
Yeah, no, and that's I was gonna say that with regard to that television show. It's set in a historical sense.
It's original historical romance novels.
Yeah, exactly. And consent was not as predominant then.
I read this one and I'm still thinking about it. It was a long time ago I read it. Again, I had no choice but to read it, so I couldn't not finish it. And the guy tries to rape her. He attempts to rape her. She manages to fight him off, and then later falls in love with him. I was like, no. There's no circumstance. And I even wrote in the comments, I was like, why? Why is she? How? I don't see her in love with him. How is that even? This was actually a review exchange, and so it wasn't something where I wrote that in the review. I wrote it to the author. I was like, I don't understand. I can't in any way relate
how she would fall in love with her attempted rapist.
Yes, like that doesn't. Oh, my attempted rapist. I love him. No, I don't care what century you're in. No, and so those kinds of things that happen in.
Maybe he had a lot of chickens.
Yeah.
No.
Maybe. I don't
That was a
know.
joke.
It was all that. So yeah, consent is sexy, bottom line.
Agreed. So what has been the hardest part of getting into this romance writing and figuring out how to do it?
I think it's really, finding an audience, I mean, this is something that I'm doing, but I'm not, I'm not Nora Roberts, nor do I intend to be, or have any, illusions that I will be. But so you're, cranking out novels that I love and that I think are fun to read, and that I have a few wonderful, amazing super fans that love to read them, that are for the most part, strangers that have started to read my books that I now can kind of consider friends because they're on my Facebook and I've been in touch with them and I've given them free books and things like that. But outside of that, I need to find that larger audience. And I think that's really hard to do. There are millions and millions and millions of books on Amazon.
Yeah.
And like 70 to 80% of them, I think, are romance novels. So it's,
Really?
Yeah, it's a huge market. It's a massive market. And a lot of them are contemporary romance novels. So it's a very tough thing to kind of break into. And then I've made a conscious decision to have diverse characters. So in lots of ways, I have a lot of bisexual romances, multiple characters. I just wrote one that has, it's not a main character, but a side character is non-binary. So my first non-binary, which is interesting because you have to kind of get in the habit of using the right pronouns and those kinds of things. I have gay side characters, and then lots of different ethnic diversity too. So, I write about the world around me. We all live in the Bay Area, and you don't walk on the street and see hot white guy and hot white girl that are both like thin and ripped. That's not how the world works. I have characters with different body types too, that one happened to be kind of thin, but a lot of them aren't. People with disabilities.
So, I would assume sex is mostly the same across humanity. But what kind of differences have you had to look at or research when having characters that are a different race than you?
I think the big thing that I've just had to do is make sure that it's authentic, that the voice is authentic. And I have beta readers that help me with that. But it's more about where you come from and who you are. You have to be a whole person. So, one of the things about writing a diverse character is that the essence of the character can't be that they're Filipino.
Yeah.
That's not,
yeah.
I'm Filipino and that's my job in this book is to be Filipino. No, your job in this book is to be a complete and whole person. And a piece of that is that you're Filipino. And a piece of that is that you grew up in a specific place with specific friends and family and life experiences. And so I think the most important thing about a diverse character is that they be a whole person, that they not be a caricature, that they not be just one thing. Because nobody is. And so if you write a white character as being this whole person with this complex background, and then you write a non-white character as, just...
stereotypical.
Yeah, stereotypical. And there's a lot of discussion in the romance world about, like, the gay friend, right?
Right.
It's not that you can't have the gay friend. It's that the gay friend needs to be a whole person, not just the quirky gay friend who's there to make everybody laugh. I have a lot of gay friends in my books, but they also have their own stories and their own whole histories. And I think that's really important, That's really what it's all about, is just creating an entire person and an entire experience. And if I don't know something, then I have to research it.
Yeah.
Let me tell you how it is. How it is. Let me tell you how it is.
Darlene has been married to her hunky husband for 17 years. And she's recently been reflecting on her own sexuality and how she explores that in her writing. So you probably would not put yourself in the straight box. Like,
right.
How do you identify, or you just don't worry about it?
It depends on the situation. I guess I never did until really recently, as an adult, because so when I was growing up, when I was a teenager and I was like experimenting, I didn't you had to be one or the other. Like, that was the deal.
Oh,
like, you
100%.
were either straight or you were gay.
No, you had to be straight or nothing.
Yeah, well, right. So here's kind of what happened. I kissed some girls when I was younger, and I liked it. But
I kissed a girl and I liked it.
It's a song, right? But and they were kind of in the same boat as me, but we had to have boyfriends, so we did. This was when we were in high school, we had boyfriends, and then we'd be like, oh, we're gonna go out for girls' night, or we'd all be at a party together, and we'd like, me and somebody would take off and go in the backyard and make out. And it was just kind of a thing that we did. Like, and we didn't know what the hell was going on. And we also, I don't think we really tried to figure it out either.
Yeah.
It was just like,
You were like,
it's best just to leave it.
Yeah, you were like,
You know?
kissing this friend is fun, and that's
Yeah.
all of the thought process I'm going to have about it.
You have to go back and have a boyfriend because that's what you're supposed to do.
Right.
So, that's kind of what it was. And I just like left it there. I was in this long-term relationship. I got married. I'm in I'm happily married to a dude who I think is a man who I find really, really attractive. I find lots of men really attractive. I find Jamie Fraser really attractive.
Karamo.
Karamo. Oh my God, I think Karamo is so hot. And then, there's also women that I think are attractive as well. So, I mean, I happen to think that Selma Hayek is one of the most amazingly gorgeous human beings on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I mean, I just never really, it just wasn't, it didn't matter because I'm married to a man. So it doesn't matter in the sense that my life, my sexual life isn't affected by things that I did when I was a kid or feelings that I have inside, right? Outwardly. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
Now I'm gonna like make somebody mad.
You've had the
but-
privilege of not having to be defined by
Right.
wherever you are on the spectrum.
And it is privilege. Yeah, that's exactly right. And it is privilege. And also a little bit of just like confusion and all those things that kind of go with it. But yeah, absolutely. So, I think one of the things that occurred that sort of made me be more aware of why it matters, because I want to be clear that it does matter, but why it matters is that a very good friend of mine who also loves the Monkees.
Your bestie.
Yeah, she was she was married to a man and had kids with him, and then is now getting married soon to a woman. And so she came late in life to the fact that she's bisexual, and that her sexuality is fluid, and that she's just as capable of being in love with and in a relationship with a man as she is with a woman. I think that that kind of reverse situation of being older and having that realization happen, or whatever we want to call it, kind of made me get really introspective about my own life and my own internal feelings.
Yeah.
And, what that means. And so I think the big outlet that I had for that, being at an age where I don't really know what to do with it or where to go with it, was to write books that had bisexual characters in it. The first one was a female. I have two with a male in it now, but and I talked to that friend of mine when I wrote it. It was a very personal book. It's called Alice's Wish. That's the book, and it's a very personal book and a very personal journey in writing it and even publishing it. And kind of putting it out there. And things always happen when you do that. So I had a commenter who wrote, this must have been written by a straight chick, and of course I was incensed and mad and upset. But I also found in a writer's group a bunch of other people that were like, me too. This is also my life experience. I'm also married to a man. I've also written these books as an outlet. I've also, come to this late in life. And so I found, this squad of people who are having similar life experiences, which helps a lot, And so it's a, I don't know. I'm not going to call it weird or strange because it's my experience, but I'm still sorting it out, like, I hope none of my family listens to your podcast because I've had this conversation with none of them. I mean, husband excluded. I've not had this conversation, and I don't know that I want to.
Yeah.
or need to or have to. I guess it's up to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, obviously I am sharing my experiences of being in middle school and early teens on this podcast. But yeah, there's definitely a lot that happened in those years that I wouldn't necessarily want my grandmother hearing about or processing with me, I get it.
I'm still processing it. I went to my very first Pride. Now that I live in San Francisco, Bay Area. That was amazing. It was an amazing experience. I went with my husband, who's incredible, and I realized that I've just come to a time in my life when it's just time. It's just time to know who you are and be who you are. And I think I'm also blessed with the time that we're living in.
Totally.
Because, 30 years ago was a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, I mean, whatever those experiences were that you had would have just been buried deep down and never thought about or spoken again. You know? Like, yeah.
I looked up recently, like, when the bisexual flag was made. It was 1992, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
That recently?
Yeah.
So did your best friend from 7th grade have like a coming out situation with you, or was it like more gradual? She was like, I'm dating a woman and now we're together and da-da-da, or?
Gosh, now I have to think about how that happened.
I guess I'm just wondering
I think it was pretty casual because she knew instinctively that I would take it well. There was no need to come out. Like, she took me to a roller derby, which she had been involved in roller derby, which is you already know.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, I'm doing roller derby.
She's a badass chick already. Yeah.
I know what's happening now, I'm getting divorced and I'm going to roller derby. Okay, well, I'm not stupid.
Yeah.
So, she took me to roller derby and introduced me to her girlfriend. Yeah, I mean, I think she just knew that it wouldn't be an issue for me.
So for you, was it like that happened and then the wheels started turning like, am I bisexual also? Or did it happen before? Or
I think a part of me always understood it, but didn't articulate it even to myself. But part of me always, I mean, I knew, I already understood it. I just didn't know what to do with it. I think it was a while after that we started to have conversations, and the first time I really talked about it was with her. And I was like, well, this was my experience when we were kids. Did you even know about this? And she's like, no. Why didn't you tell me back then? And I was like, I didn't tell anybody back then, except for the girls that I was kissing, and they didn't tell anybody either.
Right.
So
wait, so you guys were best friends and never had
we weren't really in high school. We weren't really besties.
Okay.
So it's kind of a long story, but I would say we were very close in middle school, but in high school there was kind of a situation, and I ended up in a different crowd.
Sure.
And so we were still friends, but we weren't as close anymore in high school.
That totally happens.
And nobody knew. Nobody. Not even the person that at the time would have been my bestie. And I still haven't had that conversation with that person. But she reads my books, so she probably figured it out.
Probably.
But we had that conversation like 2 years ago in Las Vegas, like a month before she got engaged. I don't know. It might have been a piece in it. It probably was a piece in it, but I think just being in the Bay Area is a piece of it too. And just living in the world that we live in today.
Right.
And everything that happened since marriage equality. And there's a lot.
Yeah.
Women's marches. I mean, just all the things that I've been involved in have all been a piece of it. There isn't any one thing.
Yeah.
I think just, the modern world becoming modern and me being privileged to be a part of it.
If you're curious what happened with Julia and Emilio, you can find all of Kay Harris's books on Amazon. She has 15 books in total, and the one she talked about today is part of the Wish series. So check it out.
Let me tell you how it is. How it is.
The 2 tracks on today's episode are by Texas Radio Fish, Woman and Funk It Deep.
How it is. Let me tell you how it is.